Boy, so the internet can be a lot sometimes. The Odyssey is written and directed by Christopher Nolan based on the Homeric epic or the Homeric epic poem of the same name. It stars Matt Damon as Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, his wife Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway, their son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, a villainous suitor whose name escapes me, I must admit, played by Robert Pattinson. It centers around Matt Damon, or it centers around Odysseus, I should say, on him and his men attempting to return home after the end of the Trojan War. On Odysseus' journey home, he encounters, the range of supernatural forces you would expect from the Odyssey, from the Cyclops to the witch Circe to the goddess Calypso, and he also encounters things like a whirlpool and, unfortunately, the more mundane trials of being lost at sea, whether it's demoralization, hunger, internal conflict, or just not having any access to food and having your ship about to sink. I mean, that might not be as unique as a Cyclops, but it's still pretty damn terrifying if you're experiencing it. This film is a masterpiece. You see the money on the screen, but the restraint, Nolan's refusal to use CGI. I'm not sure if there's any CGI in this movie. If there is, there's definitely not an over-reliance on it. But he is a true auteur. As much as that sounds like a pretentious film school word, he really is. Not only is there not that much CGI in this movie, but when maybe none, but when there's truly something magical or mysterious or whatever it is, it's awe-inspiring. Too often we see a movie about the supernatural where it's an action movie and we're just like, okay, this is the kind of movie where this sort of thing happens. But here, because it's used more sparingly and in a comparatively restrained way, it inspires real awe and reverence and terror, which is probably how Odysseus and his men actually would have felt. When things like the Cyclops in the movie appear, again, I think that was rendered animatronically. I'm not sure exactly how they did it, but I don't think it was CGI. It's terrifying and it's awe-inspiring, and even something as simple on paper as the roar of the Cyclops just inspires it's terrifying, and it feels appropriately otherworldly. Samantha Morton as Circe, the witch, turning all of Odysseus' men to pigs is just fucking terrifying. And again, the comparative restraint here is what sells all of this. The fact that as much as this is a massive movie, it is a massive movie made by a guy who got his roots in the indie sphere. When they're lost at sea, again, it's low on pointless spectacle and high on just how this actually would have been had this really happened, and you really feel like you're there. What it reminded me a lot of was the movie All Is Lost, starring Robert Redford, which I think is an almost silent movie about this lone guy lost at sea and him trying to survive, and that movie really transported you into that environment where you feel like you're on that ship with him, and you might as well be on the wreck. You feel like you're about to capsize, and that feeling I hadn't really felt. I'd literally forgotten about that movie until this movie, but that feeling is absolutely brought back here in this $250 million epic. As we see Odysseus' arc play out throughout the movie, especially by the end, we learn the weight of the guilt he carries and why. I mean, I have read the Odyssey, I think. It's the reason I'm not sure is because it was one of my first year university textbooks, and I still have it, but I don't remember if I finished it or not. But we see by the end of the movie, at first it's unclear why isn't Odysseus revealing himself once he's returned home, and it's because of the weight of guilt that has been put upon him by what he and his soldiers did. We see, like them leaving the Trojan horse, attacking all of the people, and we see, Zendaya's character. I mean, she plays Athena, but she also plays this woman who was killed during Odysseus and his men attacking Troy after having left their Trojan horse, and I don't think it's quite clear if Odysseus is just seeing Athena as this particular girl as sort of this manifestation of his guilt, or if that's just how Athena's appearing. I think, or if that's how Athena actually looks as well, or I'm not quite sure, but probably it's because he's carrying that guilt with him. And there's this concept of Zeus's law that gets spoken of a lot throughout the movie, and it's this sort of idea of, it's kind of this concept of decorum in conflict and just in general. Whenever the ancient Greeks see strangers, they bathe them, they tend to them, they feed them, they treat them appropriately. I think under the pretense that they may or may not be a god, but it's nonetheless kind of a decorum thing. But after the sneak attack from the Trojan horse, Odysseus is worried that he and his men have essentially broken the laws of war and broken the concept of decorum and changed the landscape of war and even just the way people interact with one another forever. And that is an incredible weight of guilt to bear. Curiously and appropriately, it reminded me a lot of Oppenheimer. And this is bizarre when you think about it, given that, they're based on radically different source material. One is based on, one of the canon texts of Western civilization, myth to its core. And the other is, based on a book that was a factually accurate account of this seminal moment in recent history. But in both instances, J. Robert Oppenheimer and Odysseus were both men who irrevocably altered the landscape of war. Oppenheimer with his invention of, the nuclear bomb, the Trinity test, and, the aftermath of that with the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and just the creation of nuclear weapons and nuclear proliferation in general. Just through the creation of all of that, war is irrevocably changed, and the last shot is Oppenheimer saying, "I think we did," in terms of how the world has changed, and you can tell he's feeling very guilty over his legacy. Odysseus feels exactly the same way. He didn't invent nuclear weaponry, but in a world of gods and monsters, he broke the decorum of war, and he's through the Trojan horse, and he's worried that this has altered the war landscape and the way people interact with one another forever. But Oppenheimer offers a bleak outlook at the future, appropriately bleak, but bleak nonetheless. The Odyssey offers hope from the same problem. It's as if this moment of a horizon that Odysseus and Penelope are continuing to seek out. I'm getting chills just thinking about this. And when they reach it at the end, it's almost as if Odysseus isn't absolving himself of his sins. He's not ignoring them. He's not ignoring the ripple effects of what he and his men have done. But he's kind of almost choosing to not let that define him, and hopefully that he will be forgiven and that will be forgotten on some level too, and that he can honor his dead men at long last. And there's that real opportunity for hope in the face of something that in Christopher Nolan's previous film was not really on offer. And I think that's really, really great. And we don't get hope a lot from Nolan's movies. The Dark Knight offered hope, but it was fake hope linked to a faulty premise. It was a lie. Memento offered, comforting self-delusion, self-imposed self-delusion under the pretense of a quest or purpose. Christopher Nolan's characters and his worlds often lie with the pretense of deception, either for what the character perceives as their own good or society's own good. They may be right in that moment, they may be wrong, but it's still linked to something fundamentally untrue. Here, we know what is true, we know what Odysseus has done, and he is still willing to not, forgive himself in a naive way, but just try and find some peace. And I think that's really, really moving, and it's not a theme we see from Nolan very often. Now I've got to get to the criticisms of this movie. Okay, let me just take a minute to throw the haters a bone for a second. I don't want to get too political, but these days, even though I'm more in alignment with the left and the center than the right, there's still a lot about the left culturally that I criticize. There's a lot of anti-woke things that I'm kind of sympathetic to, some of the time at least. Race swapping Snape was a bad idea. James Potter bullying Snape has this really uncomfortable subtext now. If you've read the book, Harry was going on about, Snape's trying to steal something. I just know there's so much there that is just unnecessary and uncomfortable and just didn't need to be there. So there's some race swapping criticisms that are absolutely legitimate. I would also, or at least I think they are. There's also this sort of, let's call it this kind of inclusion apparatus in Hollywood where I don't think you're even eligible for awards if you don't have a certain number of minorities or certain representations behind the camera or in front of the camera. And, obviously we want everyone, regardless of their race, sexual orientation, yada yada, to be able to find work and succeed in whatever industry they want. But I don't think I think you should be able to make a movie or do whatever you want with whoever you want. And it doesn't matter if it happens to be all white people, all black people, all men, all women, all Asians, all gay, all straight, whatever. You shouldn't be focusing on that at all unless it's relevant to your movie. You should be just trying to make creative things with creative people. And a lot of this sort of identitarian political thing, it's seeped into the culture, it's seeped into institutions. It's in some cases arguably played a hand in deciding elections, not for the better, with Trump a couple times. So this is a bigger issue. This is why the Odyssey criticism exists, if I'm going to throw the haters a bone, and I get it to a point. Now that I've said that, there was no reason for any of this. This criticism was just a bunch of nonsense. Lupita, I can't say her name, Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy, she's barely in the movie, and she was good. Do we know for sure that Helen of Troy was white? I mean, she's a mythological character. And also, does it matter? There was probably some racial diversity in ancient Greece. I mean, none of us were there. Obviously, the majority of them were white, but was everyone white? I don't know. You probably don't either. Maybe you do, but sometimes race swapping just doesn't matter at all. Shakespeare's been race and gender swapped into oblivion, and nobody cares. And the Odyssey is older. Yes, it hasn't been staged as often, but, still, it doesn't just always matter. In Shakespeare's time, female roles were played by men. Which, I'm not saying we should go back to that, but sometimes this just doesn't matter, and who cares? Elliot Page was in the movie for like a minute, and he died right away. It was like, Elliot Page is Achilles. He wasn't even Achilles. That wasn't his character. I think everyone on the internet who suddenly decided they were a scholar of ancient Greek lore really just watched the movie Troy and was comparing it with that. But I didn't see Troy, but that wasn't a perfect movie either. I don't think it was. I doubt it was. I'm sure there were historical inaccuracies in that movie. A Cyclops is also historically inaccurate. Because, everyone was complaining about, the Greek armor not being right. I mean, who cares? If we want to be real purists, none of these characters should speak in English, because they didn't speak English in ancient Greece. I don't think they did. Gladiator's not historically accurate either. And again, a Cyclops, that's really historically inaccurate. So obviously the movie sucked. If we're at a point where we can't give Christopher Nolan the benefit of the doubt, then what is even going on? None of these criticisms stacked up. And now that people have seen the movie, it's that much more meaningless. None of this mattered. There was no reason for any of this backlash, and the movie is a masterpiece. Even if the movie wasn't a masterpiece, this would be silly backlash. Yes, I found it a little jarring when there were a couple of F-bombs in the Odyssey, but even the American accents and the daddy thing, that didn't matter either. When you watch the movie, it doesn't register at all. And again, for all you purists out there, would you rather have the movie not be in English? Because that would be historically accurate. Who cares? I'm sorry, I'm mad now. This is, I tried to acknowledge, I tried to do my best to say, I understand that this doesn't come in a vacuum, this criticism, but this is a real, are we the bad guys moment for this corner of the internet that just hates everything without having seen it. Because mob mentality is a dangerous thing. Just assuming that something is good to do because everyone else is doing it is not a good thing, because that's how we get all these horrible mass movements throughout history. And and even just, obviously this is just not that, it's just people on the internet, but then you see the movie and then the movement of people hating it for no reason is just utterly silenced because the movie was incredible. And good Lord, was this just a waste of everyone's time. The fact that I'm spent this much of my review talking about this is just ridiculous. And yeah. Next time, watch the movie first. The Odyssey is a masterpiece. It's the film to beat, to my mind, this year. Christopher Nolan proved all the haters wrong. Even if it was a bad movie, a lot of this backlash would have been overblown, but it's a great movie, and none of the backlash mattered. And it will restore your faith in cinema in a time when there is an overabundance of CGI slop. This is a reminder of why cinema and art forms even matter at all, and why we want them to be better when they're not. Absolutely 4 out of 4 for The Odyssey. Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors. I was a fan of his before it was cool, back when Memento came out. He's still killing it to this day. It's an incredible film. Absolutely check it out. Like and subscribe to the channel if you want more. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, bye.